and part of this goes into my contention that I think technology can only take humans so far to a certain degree. We're not necessarily built just for purely that. We need a little bit of the analog world to keep us anchored in. So talk a little bit about more of that physical manifestation and the slowing down part.
Sure. And I know, and I don't think we've created these terms, right? Lean in and lean back types of mediums. And
Right.
print certainly is that lean back sort of experiential is probably the best term to apply to it. I always try to think about the idea of, and I've compared it to other mediums in the past. The one I really love, and especially on, up in Portland and Seattle and even out here, and believe it or not, I'm actually in LA. I'm not in New York today.
Oh,
I
okay.
flew all the
All
way
right.
out here to do a virtual LinkedIn Live, but
You're on the same time zone. That's good.
yeah, exactly. But like LA and some of the great bands, right? My 3-year-old son is obsessed with Guns N' Roses, believe it or not. But
Oh God.
the idea of like vinyl, right?
Right,
Versus
right.
digital. Now, I always think it's interesting because once upon a time, it actually made more sense, right? Back in the day of analog recording, the vinyl gave you that true depiction of the sound recorded in the studio through the analog devices. Somewhere along the way, all the studios converted over to digital. And in actuality, converting them from digital back to vinyl wouldn't really make sense. But what we're finding is that vinyl sales continue to grow because there's an experience to it, right? People actually like the pop and sizzle. It's that lean back component. Think about it this way. It's the same thing with magazines, the way I would say it. If you're leaning in, you're in your day-to-day activities, you're trying to find some information, you have a pointed question, you're looking for something, right? Or even reading on digital, your morning articles, you do a lot more scanning, you're trying to pinpoint, maybe an email pops up, maybe you get a Slack message, right? It's a much different type of experience than what you can do maybe on a weekend, right? On a Saturday or during the evening or early in the morning, where you can actually lean back and dedicate your time to the material itself, to what it is you're reading and engaging with. And I think that's unfortunately been lost a little bit. I know recently I was seeing studies about how multitasking actually does not work, right? I mean, the truth is that our brains are not wired that way. Kind of to that point, one of the fascinating or where I think is very valuable about some of the data points when we're looking at studies on the brain and how mediums resonate, it's one of those only kind of data subjects where you can fold in that information and utilize it, even if it was from 10 years ago, which I believe all the data points we're using is no earlier than like 2016. But it's because your brain hasn't changed yet, right? I mean, as ChatGPT, as AI comes into the mix, maybe 3 or 4 generations from now, our brains won't process information the same way. But as it stands currently, the physical, that experiential, the lean back, the break away from the digital saturation, all is something that as a consumer is desirable. As an advertiser, actually has your messages resonate deeper because the consumer, the reader, is in a mindset that is then more receptive to the message. They always talk about in sales, you want to get people out of like the work zone and into a comfort zone,
right,
where they're actually comfortable, relaxed, and then more receptive to your messaging.
right.
Magazines in the print space or newspaper, even direct mail delivered at the right time, recreates that same sort of lean back experience where you are more receptive to the messaging.
Yep.
They also have found with print, and to give you some of the data points, the psychological, it's actually easier for the brain, for people to understand in print. It's the motivation to cognitive load. And they've found by using eye tracking and biometrics that something like direct mail actually outperforms digital by about 50% in that ability to understand the messaging and how it then obviously activates in your brain. And ultimately, like I keep saying, leads to that recall, that positive emotional connection to it, and ultimately to action, which is what, if we're in the advertising and marketing space,
right,
we're ultimately looking for.